This is Q on CBC Radio 1 across Canada, Sirius Satellite Channel 159 across North America, from PRI, Public Radio International in the United States. Take a listen to this. Taste of Journeyman from Amon Tobin's latest release, ISAM, which stands for Invented Sound Applied to Music. Brazilian-born Amon Tobin's relentless sound explorations have made him one of the most respected and popular electronic music artists in the world. Explorations that include recording ants using the world's most sensitive microphones, making homemade amplifiers out of tinfoil, and manipulating the sound of a creaky old leather chair. Amon Tobin has composed original soundtracks for movies like 21, The Italian Job, as well as Tom Clancy's video game Splinter Cell, Chaos Theory. He's also collaborated with a long list of artists as diverse as the Kronos Quartet and drum and bass legends Noisa. And recently, the London Metropolitan Orchestra performed his music at Royal Albert Hall. On his current tour, which is sold out in the United States, Amon Tobin has once again redefined electronic music performance with a show that includes a 3D light installation. And right now, Amon Tobin joins me in Studio Q. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm very happy to have you here. I as I was just telling you before we hit the air, I saw your show recently in Toronto, and it sounds like hyperbole to say it blew my mind, but it did blow my mind. I can't even begin to understand how you conceive of this, both visually and audio-wise. We'll get to that. Let me ask you this first. This new record, ISAM, is made up of mundane sounds you manipulated, like the creaky chair or two light bulbs clinking together. What was it about these basic sounds that made you or makes you want to turn them into music?
Well, I guess I've kind of always been interested in the idea of transforming sounds and reorganizing existing music into new music. And the last album I did focused on field recordings and trying to sort of treat old sounds as potentially musically useful, whether or not they were, established instruments or whether they were sounds which weren't inherently musical. And so by the time I got to this record, I was more interested in changing those into synthesized sounds, into sort of marrying recorded sound with synthesized sound. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at now.
But is the arrangement dictated by the sounds you discover, or do you have the arrangement in mind and then...
Yeah, it's that way around.
You search for the sounds.
Yeah.
And on this record in particular, and I noticed this one in the live performance, I mean, it's this interesting collision of interesting sounds, but it isn't necessarily... there's no, at times, linear rhythms. It's not necessarily danceable. Does that matter to you?
Well, not really. I mean, this record wasn't really about making people dance. The thing about this record is I really wanted to make a genuine bond between sound design and music. You know, sound design is this term that kind of gets thrown around a lot and usually applies to some sort of effect on the peripherals, you know.
Right.
And I really wanted it to be a central thing to really...
But sound design also sounds more somehow technical or academic. It doesn't sound as visceral as music, right? We don't think of like, oh my God, I'm going to lie with my lover and listen to sound design.
Yeah. Well, I know, but fair enough. That's fine. The thing is, the way I approach it is that I'm as interested in one as the other. So I guess it's just my own personal interest in both of those avenues, I guess.
I mean, it's quite remarkable because a lot of what you're doing really hasn't been done before you in the way you do it. So it's new territory that you somehow have the confidence to explore.
I'm honestly just curious, and I'm pretty much driven by that. You know, I'm exploring it like anybody who is interested in stuff they don't know much about. I mean, it seems like natural.
Amon, in the press release for ISAM, you're quoted as saying, "It's by far the most exciting development in my personal quest for some control over nature."
Right, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I really regret saying that because honestly, I'm not really trying to control nature. I guess all I meant was that I'm like anybody, any artist, I guess, they're trying to sort of express whatever they have inside by taking the things around them and forming them into something that they can use.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can be a painter or whatever, and you use your paints and you organize them into something that's coherent. And it's the same with the sound. I'm not trying necessarily to control it. I'm just trying to make it useful to me so that I can express what I want to express.
What about the relationship between two things that on the face of them seem paradoxical, which is nature and technology? I spoke earlier this year with Bjork, and she's very fascinated with the fusion of technology and nature or organic life.
Right.
Does that interest you?
Well, very much. And the funny thing is that the more you kind of delve into synthesizing natural things, natural sounds, trying to make, I guess, virtual, synthetic versions of natural things, instruments or sounds, you kind of have to start looking in detail at how nature works and how, things actually behave in the natural world. And so you get more and more fascinated by the link between mathematics and nature and all of these patterns that you weren't necessarily aware of that you sort of have to look at when you're synthesizing it.
And how do you look at that? Is this do you actually do scientific research?
I'm not a scientist or anything, but I mean,
the relationship between mathematics and nature, I wouldn't know where to start with that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you can look at something as simple as, an oscillating, a waveform, something that has a kind of a pattern, a rhythmic pattern, and you start to look at how, that applies to harmonics and how harmonics, in music, there's this mathematical coherence between different frequencies and the way that, sound is turned into spectrums of different frequencies, and all of these things just make sense when you start looking at them, right. I guess more analytically, but it's beautiful, it really is.
Right. But just to give you some perspective, you don't totally sound like the average indie rocker when you put it in those terms. You do sound a bit more like a scientist.
I'm like a nerd. Yeah, well, all right, fair enough. I'm not an indie rocker, I guess. Yeah.
This latest tour that we've been talking about, this live show, I mean, receiving rave reviews, and it is, you say, unlike anything you've done before. In this case, the audience sees you ensconced inside this multidimensional, shifting 3D structure, these cubes. How exactly is that working live?
Well, basically everything is triggered from the various bits of computers and kit in my cube, and I MIDI trigger everything that you're seeing and hearing from my gear, basically. I mean, but it's electronic music, so when you talk about live, I mean, it's never going to be like, I'm not playing a grand piano back there, I'm triggering sounds, I'm manipulating sounds, and frankly, it's not very visually engaging to watch somebody actually do that, pressing buttons and twiddling knobs. So really the idea is to try and make something that is visually engaging out of that, but it's also very relevant to the music.
Well, it's not just visually engaging, it's spectacular visually. Do you ever worry about, or how do you walk the line so that the visuals, as spectacular as they are, don't trump the sounds that you're making or the focus on them?
Well, you know,
or do you care?
Not really. I mean, they're not competing with each other. The idea is to make a show that is worth coming to see, you know, because the music, when I make an album, I don't care about what, you know, necessarily what people are going to make of it, or whether it's going to be, you know, whether it's for everyone or not.
Right.
Or, you know, I'm just making it for me, and I hope that other people like it. But when you make a show and you're inviting people to come and see you, to some extent, I think you owe people, you know, some sort of spectacle, something, you know, that they can share communally, and so that's kind of how I approached it.
You're sitting in it as it's happening. Are you aware of what's happening visually when you're inside the cube?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any sense of what we're seeing?
Actually, yeah. I mean, I've got a screen with that shows exactly what you're seeing.
Okay, all right.
And obviously, you know, I know it inside out.
Yeah, you're not just tripping somewhere inside the screen, inside the cube.
I'm not saying I'm not tripping inside the cube.
Right. It certainly looks like someone's tripping when we watch it. How do you've done movie scores, you've done video games. How do you choose at this point which project to work on? And for example, would you compose music for a romantic comedy, or do you look for things that already fit in with the music you make?
I guess the criteria I'd have would be that I can have control over the music I'm doing. I'm less worried about where it ends up. I'm more worried about people messing with my music. I guess I'm more precious about that. So if I can make the music I want for an advert for dog cookies or something, you know, as if I can make the best music ever for a dog cookie advert, that's fine. But if somebody wants me to make shit music for, you know, an amazing movie, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So what does that mean to you, messing with your music? What would that mean?
I mean, if people are there, kind of the creative department saying, you know, can you sound more like,
right.
you know, so that's kind of where I draw the line, because in the end, I really care about what I do, and I don't feel particularly snobby about, you know, where, if it's in some sort of populist, you know, context or whatever. I actually quite like that. I like the idea of this sort of odd music being heard in very sort of wide areas.
For dog cookies, for example.
Dog cookies specifically, yeah.
You are turning 40 next year, not to out you on that, but your first album, Adventures in Foam, turned 15 this past September.
Right.
What do you think of the way electronic music has evolved over that time? I mean, the orthodoxy is to say it was this alternative form that has become mainstream or populist now. Do you feel that way?
I mean, I look at electronic music as something that's been going on, I mean, you know, a lot longer than since the 90s, obviously. I mean, we can go back to Pierre Schiffer, and, you know, I can't think of a better time to be making electronic music, because we just have so much power at our disposal now, and so, you know, so much flexibility with the tools now. So I can't imagine why there wouldn't be a sort of surge in all of that.
You try to use the technology to explore the limits of sound. I'm thinking of many DJs and producers use technologies as a shortcut. I'm thinking at the mixing stage or recording of music. Do you think technology, this is a broader question, but I relish the chance to ask you these things. Do you think technology has expanded or detracted from the art of making music?
That's kind of up to the individual using it. It's like any other tool, you know, people's inherent laziness will direct them to the sort of shortest route between 2 points, and I think that, you know, technology manufacturers will make the most of that and try and sell you something as, you know, this will make your life easier. But it's up to the individual using the tool to say, okay, am I going to just do what I could have done earlier much quicker, or am I going to take the same amount of time and do something different, you know? So I really think it's down to people's motivation and curiosity to use the tools available to do something more extraordinary and more imaginative.
Do you self-identify as a musician?
No, not really, because I think musicians, I mean, my idea of a musician is somebody who interacts with other musicians, plays something live maybe. I don't know. I don't know how I'd qualify myself really in that respect.
You're more misanthropic. You don't like other people.
I don't really like other people.
It's great getting the chance to talk to you.
Thanks.
What's the best part for you of making the kind of inventions that you do at this point?
Well, I guess I feel so much excitement, from trying things that, I guess, things that I haven't tried, and I feel just so, I guess, motivated, by this whole, because it's like, well, the more you find out about something, the less you know, and that's so true. You know what I mean? So you're constantly on this kind of trip of discovery, and that's just an amazing place to be.
Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Amon Tobin, he's been with me here in Studio Q. His current album is called ISAM. For more details on it, you go to amontobin.com, AMONTOBIN.com. We'll put a link to that from our website, cbc.ca/Q. Amon Tobin has been with